And we are live. How's it going, everyone? Super excited today because we have a project doing something unique with NFTs. They're bringing music to pixel art, all while allowing musicians to upload music and earn royalties. The cool part is there's a lot of kind of help from the community that allows creators to work alongside the community, all while letting royalties come together. So today I'm joined by Koten, co-founder of Pixel Bands, who hosts a plethora of Web2 experience coming from giants like Facebook and Amazon. How's it going, Koten?
Hey, Greg, how you doing, man?
Doing great, dude. Amazing to be on here with you. It was amazing seeing Pixel Bands over at South by Southwest, which you guys had set up there, and then even just moving forward, everything you guys are doing on the platform. So, just to kick things off, do you want to lay down some context for what Pixel Bands is and the goal behind it?
Sure, yeah. So, our mission at Pixel Bands is to accelerate music on Solana by building community and tools for musicians. And so, Pixel Bands is a NFT collection. The first generation is, like a collection of 4,444 NFTs. These NFTs are avatars or PFPs. They play instruments. And kind of the unique thing about the collection is that each NFT has an audio file on it, and that audio file is an 8-bar stem that is from our community. And so when we went about building this project, we wanted to really make sure that musicians in our community were able to reap the benefits of Web3 and smart contracts and stuff like that. And so what we did was we sourced a bunch of music. We gave our musicians parameters. We said, give us 8-bar stems that are 75 BPM, C major 7 key. And we'll process, we'll mint them, we'll do the rest, and we'll give you half of the royalties on sales for life. And so, we went through this process of sourcing this music. We went through a mint, and now we are a thriving community in Web3, full of really talented musicians who, are really eager to, push this thing forward.
Yeah, definitely. And something I just want to poke a little bit further into is you hinted at the ethos of Web3, really how it allows people to own a lot more of their content. How does this really start to open up opportunities for musicians? You mentioned how they can get royalties. What is a bit novel about this process, or what does it improve on in the past for musicians?
Sure. Yeah. The Web 2 or just even before that, right? The legacy kind of music world has been pretty predatory to musicians. I don't think that's uncommon knowledge. I think most folks, even with just a little bit of understanding of what goes on in the creative music industry, understands that, the artists, the folks that are actually doing the creation, that have the passion, that put in the hours to do the work, they kind of reap the least benefits from that. And so, like everything with Web3, right? Like it's really about taking power and money from the middleman, the people that are gatekeepers, and putting it directly into artists' hands, right? And so music is no different, and that was kind of the motivation for the project in the first place. Is I saw these NFT collections on Solana doing really well, and after that I saw these one-of-one artists coming out and do really well, and so it was just kind of an obvious question of like, well, why can't we do this with music if we can do it with visual art, right?
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense there. And even just on the idea, you were touching a bit on the beginnings of Pixel Bands there. When was this really time for it to come to fruition? When did you guys decide to jump in? And can you give some background on the team as well?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So I started thinking about the project, back in like August, September. So, I got into Solana NFTs through Solana Monkey Business. So that was like the first NFT I had ever minted, and really the first NFT I've been involved in at all. I knew really very little about NFTs. My exposure to crypto or Web3 have been purely through tokens and holding Bitcoin and Ethereum and things like that. And so I had a lot to learn when I was coming in, and as I said, before, as I was seeing kind of what it was, like how you could take art and the generative part of art, and even with the one-on-one artist, and put this art on these smart contracts that could distribute royalties, and you started to see these communities form around this art, and it seemed like a really, really big thing, like a really cool, important, powerful thing. And so like I said, the first question was like, okay, like, can you even put an audio file on an NFT? I mean, that's literally like the
Mhm.
level that I was like coming at it from. And so, figuring that out, talking with a bunch of engineers, like hopping in the Solana Labs Discord, hopping in the Metaplex Discord, just really trying to reach out to folks that have these expertise and understand, like, could this thing even be possible, was kind of the start of it. And then, once we figured out that it was, possible from an engineering standpoint, it was just about scoping it, building a team around it. And so, I met my first co-founder here in Austin, just by kind of like meeting for drinks and talking about the project idea. And when we did that, he got really excited about it, and we started, actually looking for, okay, let's get designers, let's get an engineer, let's try to bring in some folks that are really expert and deep in the music field. And so that's kind of what we've done with our team. We have a really awesome, diverse, scrappy team. So we're a team of 5. We have myself. I come from, like you said, the Web 2 world. I've worked in digital products for the last 10, 12 years or so.
Mhm.
We have J5, who is like an absolute legend in the music industry. He's definitely like top 5% in his industry for what he does as an audio engineer, and probably better than that, to be honest with you. But
That's
yeah,
awesome.
super grateful to have him. And he's really our music gigabrain, not only from a like processing and engineering and mixing and mastering standpoint, but I mean, he just knows the music industry in and out. He's been in it for so long, and he's really helped us, um, kind of folks that are not that knowledgeable in like what it means to operate within the music industry, and more specifically, like what it means to disrupt that industry, right? Like there's so much nuance, and so many things that you have to understand about the traditional industry in order to kind of push it forward and try to disrupt it. And so he's been just an incredible addition to the team. We have 2 engineers. They're both in South Africa. They're college students, and they're just amazing, man. Like they're really talented. And I mean, if you just go look at some of the tools that we've built, like the studio, the Launchpad, even the Mint, like I said, like this was the first time on Solana where we had like moving images and audio on the same NFT. And these kids are just building it. It's freaking awesome.
Yeah.
And then we have our artist, who's Cronus, who's extremely talented as well. He's a one-man just shop, man. Like that guy pushes out so much art, and it's always quality. He does all of our promo stuff. He's amazing as well. And then last, we have Jay Russell, who's our community manager, who's just super passionate about music. You know, Kind of the perfect fit to be a community manager, because he's a passionate about music, and he's also passionate about people, and he loves engaging with folks. And so, yeah, that kind of rounds out our team.
Yeah. That's amazing to hear. It sounds like you guys have balance from all different aspects. Obviously, one of the fundamental things that are important is that the team inherently enjoys music, but seeing things of actually having someone in the industry that's used to engineering, producing, and then also people who are solving the engineering problems, of course, on the blockchain, being able to get these files onto the NFT itself, having a smooth mint, all of those things. So I do think it's really cool that you guys went a step further, right? You didn't just jump on with a pixel art NFT. You really thought about how it could be unique. And so really just moving forward on what the platform currently looks like. You mentioned how easy it was for musicians really to upload an 8-bar stem, what key it is, and then from there it kind of just goes on itself. Can you really explain the process from the top, what it looks like from the musician? Do all musicians get chosen? Are there certain recordings that can't be mixed? Maybe the quality is not well. What's the process look like there?
Sure. Yeah. So just take a step back before going into that. Like I kind
Yeah.
of want to compartmentalize like the different like tools and things that we provide to our community, right? So like the NFT collections that you're talking about, these are like generational collections, right? So like the first generation that released back in January was a lo-fi collection, and we gave, like I said, people really specific parameters. We gave them, what key the music should be in, what BPM the music should be in. And for that generation, we took everything. We just said, look, like our goal is to hit 100 stems per instrument. So we asked for guitar, piano, bass or drum stems that met these parameters. And being a new project, we didn't know what I didn't know if we were going to get 5 stems. I didn't know if we were going to get 500 stems, 1,000 stems. And so as a team, we just set a goal and we said, look, like if we can get to 100 stems per instrument, we would consider that a win, right? And so that was our goal. We went out to our community and we said, we need 100 of each. As long as they meet the criteria as far as the key and the BPM, because these things need to be able to be combined, we'll take it, And so we ended up getting all the music in like 3 or 4 days. At first it was, a big wave. And as you would imagine, like the drums instrument was the one that filled up the quickest, right? Because it's probably like has the least friction of actually making, as opposed to like a guitar, to where like, like not only do you have to like know how to play guitar, but you have to be able to record it at home. And there's just a little more friction to that. And so drums filled up really quickly. The rest ended up filling up. And we got everyone's wallet addresses. We got their artist name, which is, we asked for their Twitter handle to kind of put that in the metadata. Got their wallet so we could distribute the royalties, like I said, and then went to town on just like processing this stuff. And, to answer your question, like there were a handful of stems where it was just like really clear that, it was either in the wrong key, or like somebody might have submitted a bass stem that was clearly like a piano, instrument. And so for those cases, we went back to the artist and we said, hey, like, you're going to need to resubmit, or we're just not going to be able to include this in the collection. And so that part, honestly went pretty smoothly and was kind of the funnest part of the project.
Yeah, that's awesome. And just for my understanding here, and maybe some new users, is this something where any musician can submit? Do they need to hold an NFT? And then just because that's a little shorter of a question, I just want to tack on there as well. What did the mixing process look like there of making it able for all of these to be layered? Was it a lot of going in manually? Be great to paint the picture there.
Yeah, totally. So as far as like musicians and them submitting music, so we do these generations as like collections. And the cool thing about like this kind of project and mechanism that we have is, our goal is to release a ton of collections, right? So like we did lo-fi first. Our Gen 2 is going to be EDM. And so the criteria for that is going to be, it needs to be an F minor key. It needs to be 128 BPM. It can be, a bass stem, a drum stem, a lead stem, or like an effect stem. And so, when we start sourcing music for that here really soon, like anybody can submit, we're going to approach it the same way, to where we'll have an idea of like what our goals are around what we want to collect. But the goal of the project is to, empower musicians. And so like, I don't see a situation where we're in this window of collecting music and we, are turning people away and telling them like, no, we can't take your music. If we have to go to a bigger collection than 4444 like we did last time, like great, we're more than happy to do that. The only, I think, change we might have from Gen 1 is that, in Gen 1, we said, like, you can submit as many stems as an artist as you want. If we ended up in a situation where we're getting, people submitting 100 stems like each, and we have, like last generation, we had like 81 artists, I think. And so, let's say we set a goal to do 150 artists, right? Like, we're going to have to say, like, okay, probably going to take, maybe 4 or 5 stems per artist. But as far as individuals and them being able to submit music, as long as they're able to do it within the window that we're asking for, I don't see why we wouldn't take it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And now I kind of want to flip to the other side. So we got into that. You talked about a bit of the collections, what it looks like submitting. It'd be great to hear now from the users end. How do they interact with this communal aspect? It seems like you're able to build a band with all of these stems and really layer them amongst each other and make unique sounds and music.
Yeah, exactly, man. And so, when just thinking about the project, like, we asked ourselves, like, how do you make this collaborative, right? Like, that's the really unique thing about music as an art, is that, if you think about, visual art, for example, like, I don't know that there's a concept of like bands in visual art, or like groups, like it's usually individuals that are doing their thing. But in music, it's extremely collaborative, right? And like, even if you think as big as like, symphonies and orchestras, like this is, tens, sometimes hundreds of musicians coming together to make a single, piece of music. And so, we thought that that would be a really cool part of this NFT project would be, let's let people take these stems that have been created from, musicians all over the world and try to make music with them. Not only a cool idea conceptually, but also like a pretty like challenging thing from an engineering standpoint, if you think about it. Like, when we were talking to our dev about this, Owen, we were like, hey, do you think this is possible? And he's like, man, I'll be honest with you, this has never been done, so I'm not sure. I'm gonna have to go look into it and let you know. And so, as he does, when we ask him really hard questions, he goes and researches, and 9 times out of 10 he comes back and he's like, yeah, it's actually possible. Let's kind of t-shirt size this and see how long it would take to build it, and make a decision on that. And so that's what we've done with this first generation is we have a studio. So if you go to studio.pixelbands.io, you are able to connect your wallet. It'll identify all of the Pixelband NFTs that you have, and it'll load them into, kind of like a DAW. Maybe a little bit of a stretch calling it a DAW right now, but essentially what you're doing is you're bringing in your stems and you're able to kind of combine them and mix them. So we have like volume sliders to where, if you make a good groove with, 4 of your NFTs and let's say, you want to just lower that bass line a little bit, or let's say the drums are kind of, crowding the mix and you want to turn that down, you can do that. And then once you find a combination that you really like, you can go ahead and mint that into an NFT. It burns your 4, individual, band member NFTs, if you will, and then gives you a full NFT with your song and your 4 band members, visually in that NFT. And so, that's kind of the mechanism there. For this first generation, I think it works really well with lo-fi. It'll be really interesting to see how we can, raise the bar on that with Gen 2. I think we have some cool ideas.
Yeah, that's super exciting, especially the aspect that there's so many different genres that you guys can attack and really get into. So getting into EDM next will be super interesting, and just seeing what people come up with and create. So you obviously have what you just explained as minting the band in the studio. What do people do with the band moving forward from there? I know you guys have a battle of the bands that it sounds like you guys are just closing up as well. So it would be great to hear, because it sounds like there's almost a progression, right? It starts with the musicians uploading their stems. The community is able to go mint them, but then actually go and mix them together in this pseudo DAW that you guys are creating. That sounds like you're only looking to improve. And then from there, what does the outlook look like when someone has a band? Also, what does the band mean for the musician? So a little bit of loaded there, but we can
Sure.
start general,
No,
and I
totally.
can pick it apart if needed.
No, of course. So, so right now we have this battle of the bands going on where it's a community vote for. I think there was like 160 or so bands that were made for Gen 1. So we have we had to break it up into 3 days because it's quite a bit of music. But yeah, we have folks come in the Discord. They can listen to each band. They can vote for it. We have some really great prizes. Like first place gets 100 soul. Second place, I think it's like 25 soul and a bunch of other goodies. We have some other cool categories like, best band name, most rare band. I think best looking band is another one where, we're giving away, I think, some Portal Genesis cards and some whitelists for Gen 2 and stuff like that. But, outside of that, we want our bands to we want the holders of these bands, to your point, like this is kind of it's like a cycle, right? It's like, okay, great. You source the music, you mint the music, you have a window where people can create with this music. And then you have this kind of event that celebrates everything that's been done.
Yeah.
After these things are done, we really want the holders of these bands to be kind of like our white label / VIP members. And so, the team has been thinking a lot about what that means and what value we can provide folks. So, first and foremost, and this has been something that has been sort of baked into the roadmap since we started the project. As a creator of a band, the royalty splits ends up including you. And so when you make a band, the 50% royalty that originally went to the musician on the original NFTs breaks down into each of the 4 musicians on your band gets 10% of that royalty. And then you as, the quote unquote producer of that band get 10% of royalties on sales as well forever, right? So you make a Gen 1 band, maybe in a couple of years when, music NFTs are just really mainstream in the way that you own and consume music. Somebody might look back at this project at Gen 1 and go like, wow, like that was kind of a really cool thing that happened at the beginning of all this. And if somebody buys that band for however much money, you as the creator of that band will get 10% of half of the royalty for life. So that's kind of the first like utility, if you will. Outside of that, we want to really make sure that the value we're providing our band holders is centered around music. And so and we'll talk about this shortly, I'm sure, but as we, launch our NFT Launchpad and Marketplace, we want to make those tools free and feeless for people who hold bands. We want to give people who hold bands exclusive and priority access to music that is launching on our marketplace. And so we're talking to some really cool, big name artists about launch partners for the marketplace. And so, we want to give early access to our band holders. We also want to give them free music NFTs. I think one really cool way for us to get musicians that aren't into Web3 interested in this is to, explain to them that we have a community and an audience that is hungry for this kind of content. And so, I can see a world where we're partnering with musicians to, do free airdrops to our band holders, where it's like, okay, this is a new musician who's coming onto the scene. Like, he has a really great song that we're just going to airdrop to everybody that holds a band. And, you can expect that to happen fairly often. And so, small things like that like we can continue to evolve over time. But like I said, I think in general, at a high level, it's really about treating those band holders as like kind of our VIP community members.
Yeah, that's super awesome there. And it makes a ton of sense. It's also such an interactive funnel where there's a process going on through the entire team, the entire thing. People are able to mint their NFTs, hear the sounds, and then really go in and make music. I think it's also awesome how you talked about the communal aspects of being in a band and music, and overall it's connecting these musicians together. There's many cases where probably these musicians would have never connected or their sounds would have never meshed, but it's just coming together because of this generative pixel art collection. And then you have people minting bands and really just getting super creative. I want to dive a little bit into what you're talking about with the marketplace and Launchpad and just hear the thoughts about that. When did this come up? And then what's the timeline on it?
Yeah, absolutely, man. So, after our Gen 1 mint, like it went really well. We were super stoked that, people just had like any interest in purchasing this thing that we had been working on for, the last few months.
Yeah.
And, about a week after mint, we had this kind of, like I said, this mechanism to where it's like, great, like, this is just a rinse and repeat process. Like, we'll do different genres, we'll have a lot of fun, we'll take music from people, we'll mint it, we'll go through this process, and we can probably do this, a bunch of times because there's a ton of different music genres. We would attract a ton of different musicians that, kind of fit into these genres, and great, everything's going to be fun. But myself, as a product person, coming from a product world, like, if I'm committed to doing this, like, I have to ask myself the question, like, what value am I providing, like, for musicians? Like, how do we actually achieve our mission of like accelerating music on Solana, right? And so when we thought about that this big question as a team, we kind of came away with two parallel paths that we feel we have to achieve in order to, really make this project do what it's intended to do. So the first path is community building, right? Like, we have to have a strong, thriving community of both musicians and fans that are engaged and want to join us in pushing this Web3 movement forward, and, join us in helping musicians and other artists empower themselves. Join us in, just understanding that this world of smart contracts and NFTs, there's a lot of messiness and a lot of craziness, but at the end of the day, like, the core utility of it is empowerment, and it's freedom, and it's the ability to, cut out a middleman that would otherwise take a significant chunk of what you actually deserve. And that's a challenging thing, right? That's something that takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. You have to continuously work at it and get better at it. The second path is, okay, great. If we have a thriving, community of musicians who are motivated, what else do they need to succeed? Well, they need tools, right? They need tools so that they can go and take their work, get it on chain, and monetize it. And so from there, it was really clear, like, if we can have a strong community and we can also give them tools that they can go from creation to collaboration to distribution to monetization, if we can create that whole user journey within our ecosystem, it's going to be great, right? And so that's where we decided, okay, over the next 6 months, our focus is going to be community building, and it's going to be building these tools that can take folks from, hey, I might want to put music on a blockchain, to my music is now launched and on a marketplace and available for anybody to buy. And that's kind of what we're in the middle of doing, and actually pretty close to shipping here. So, as you know, when we were in South by Southwest, we were kind of beta testing our Launchpad, which went off really well. Like, it's always amazing to like interface with people in person, and especially as I'm doing this around music and Web3, like when you see people's like reaction to this thing where you show them, you sit them down and you're like, yeah, here, take your audio file, upload an image, mint it, and boom, there it is in your wallet. Now you can go sell that on any marketplace you want, right? Like, I don't know. It's cool to watch people's reaction to that, because it's just a whole new paradigm for them, right? Especially folks who have been in the music industry for a while. They're like, wow, this is like, I just have to wrap my head around this. And so that went really well. We were beta testing that. We have some features that we're still baking into it, like, the ability to add multiple creators and royalty split. There are some other cool things down the road that we want to do, but we want to get version 1 out pretty quickly. Alongside that, we're going to be partnering with Holoplex, or actually not going to be, we are partnering with Holoplex to, build out a custom marketplace that has a user experience that's centered around, music. And so what this means is, you can look for things like stem packs from artists, MIDI packs, songs, albums, EPs, generative music, things like that. And the great thing about working with Holoplex is, they're a fantastic company. They open source all of their code, and so we want to be partners in pushing music forward in terms of like, what is the user experience like to purchase music in Web3. And so our devs and the Holoplex devs are really closely connected. We're going to be working with them to iterate on their sort of base layer of marketplace code, and we're going to also be open sourcing like the things that we build from a music standpoint too. And so really excited about that partnership. And timelines on that are actually coming up pretty quickly. Like, I have a really high level of confidence we could release like a version 1 with like very minimal features, like probably in the next week or two. So really what our goal is in the very short term is to kind of look at what it looks like to launch something with maybe a few extra features, and what kind of time and resources that would add to the timeline. But I would expect us to have those tools ready, extremely soon.
Yeah, that's amazing. And even just the idea of building out this infrastructure that hasn't necessarily exist, to not only give the artist tools to, of course, participate in everything we outlined prior to this, the battle of the bands, being able to put the stem players together, but then also taking it a step further. And as you mentioned, having things like MIDI packs, and then also being able to load songs on there, and really understanding and trying to build a holistic toolbox for musician makes a lot of sense. Wrapping it back into what you were saying with product design, and really making sure you're adding value to the ecosystem, I think is incredible. And on that regard, I think you guys don't look to stop there. I think there's more utility for Pixelband NFT holders. I saw you guys were looking at just trying to open up tons of avenues that musicians can leverage, whether it's music products, software, things of that nature. Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit? Just
Sure.
curious.
Yeah, absolutely, man. At the end of the day, like we have a really tight pulse on our community, and so whatever value that they want to get that we can give, from a like project and legal standpoint, like we want to do. And so we've done things like we've given away Ableton subscriptions. We do open mic nights where we like give away Pixelman's NFTs so that like our performers can have an incentivized audience that wants to come.
Yeah.
um you know these are just a couple of examples of things that, we can do for our pixel band holders. But like I said, at the end of the day, it's really about like having a constant pulse on what the community wants and listening. And so, there are areas where, like, as a new company and as a company that is kind of, we have our feet in two like very sticky industries, one being cryptocurrency and the other being like the music industry. We have to be careful and eliminate all tail risks. And so, like, we our holders have asked for things like, can we do rev share from the marketplace? And it's like, yeah, like that would be great in an ideal world, but like we also can't put ourselves in the situation where we're like classified as a security and have to go through all of these like hoops and legal things like that. Like, so yeah, I mean, like I said, I think at the end of the day, it's about understanding what value our holders want, and delivering that in the best way we can.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And I even just want to build on that, take it a bit more higher level in regards to building this community, really having a tool set that is fun for the users, but then of course creates leverage and solves these issues that we've talked about in traditional music.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, just the biggest thing that seems to happen when projects are trying to bridge things in traditional spaces in crypto, there's inherently a lot of friction. It seems like you guys have gotten a handful of musicians. How has the process been of really onboarding? I imagine there's a lot of things of starting and having them set up a wallet. I think a cool thing is that they don't necessarily need to do a lot of this. I'm curious, how are the royalties paid out to them? I guess now that I'm like thinking about this more, how has the friction been for onboarding these musicians as well?
Totally, yeah. So, everything's automated when it comes to royalties, and that's the beauty of, the space we're building in is like we build the smart contract, the smart contract runs itself, and all of these things we don't have to touch, which is the beautiful part about what we're doing here. So,
Yeah.
everything runs through a smart contract. To your latter question, there's some interesting challenges when it comes to onboarding musicians, and they kind of live in different camps. So one is just like awareness and education of what Web3 is, right? Like, I think a lot of folks, they get exposed to cryptocurrencies and NFTs through the context of like to the moon, or like, oh, like somebody bought an NFT for $100 and sold it for $50,000, right? And that's kind of their first exposure to this. And so, oftentimes we really have to like level set, and explain to them like, look, here's why the technology is powerful. Here are the problems it solves. Here's like kind of where we see this going over the next 1, 3, 5 years. And so there's a huge education gap in terms of when people are coming in, like what are their goals, what are their incentives, what do they understand, and where can we kind of meet them and kind of shift their thinking into like how they should be approaching this and how they should be leveraging Web3 NFTs and smart contracts as tools for their creative work. There's also copyright and IP issues. So you have a lot of
Okay.
folks that we've interfaced with that they can't actually give us music because their labels own their IP. It's an ironic situation when that happens, right? Because that's the exact problem we're trying to solve. And so like that can be tough for people when we have to ask these like really hard questions when we're partnering with musicians. And you know um, it's an unfortunate situation that the legacy music industry puts artists in this situation to where literally there's a tool at their disposal that they could be using, but they're blocked, by their label or by their manager or by whomever. And so that's another, pretty interesting challenge. And then three, I think another interesting challenge for, especially for, existing musicians who have, decent sized audiences is, what I hear from them is, a large majority of their audiences don't really care about NFTs right now, and I think
Yeah.
that's just a product of us being, super early. Like, and that's something that we have to constantly remind ourselves, especially when we're building, is that like we're just so damn early, man. Like um, we're in like the Nokia like playing Snake, on your brick phone era of this like Web3 movement, and so um, yeah, I think just broadly those are kind of three challenges that we run into when we're working with musicians.
Yeah, super interesting to hear that aspect, and even just mentioning the development of Web3 and getting and reducing that friction. It's super interesting, especially when you take it and apply it to music. So this is really diving down the rabbit hole. There's very few music NFT platforms. They're all approaching things a little bit differently. So it's super cool to see how you guys are solving these unique issues, looking to tackle them, all keeping that Web3 ethos. And of course, there are difficulties, but over time, it seems like the infrastructure is just being built out. Also, simultaneously, users are being onboarded, they're being educated more and more. So I definitely think it's exciting, especially as the amount of creators that are jumping into the NFT space is only increasing.
Exactly. Yeah, that's kind of a big point here, is that, I think I read something like 50,000 new people bought an Ableton subscription last year, right? So like 50,000 new users in a year decided, like, yeah, like I'm going to try to make some music. I'm going to spend, what is it, like $200, $300 on the base Ableton subscription, and
Yeah.
like try to make some music. So, you know, our goal is to get that funnel to Web3, right? So like over time, if we can capture 10% of that next year, that would be a huge milestone, right? And if we can capture, another 20-25% of that the year after, that would be a huge milestone. And so hopefully what you see is this bridge, from Web 2 creation to Web 3 creation. And we want to, like I said, our goal is to build those tools on chain to make it really easy for people to bridge, right? Like I think that's the thing right now, is there's a ton of friction, both in conceptually understanding why you should do this thing, and in the earliness of the tools that we have right now to give musicians. And when I say we, I don't just mean Pixelman, I just mean Web3 in general, right? Like the tools we have right now compared to Web 2 are just very immature.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's cool to see the amount of creators growing as well, all while simultaneously you have everything that's brewing in crypto, specifically, for example, in the Solana ecosystem, everything that's building from DeFi, NFTs, infrastructure. It's really incredible. And combining these two catalysts seems to be really exciting. I'm curious, how has it been really working in the ecosystem? It sounds like you guys have already been able to find some partnerships. And then obviously the super basic question that I like asking, when was it apparent that you guys came across and decided on Solana?
Yeah, working in the Solana space has been great. Like, just for me personally, like I said, when I kind of dove into the Solana NFT space, it became really clear, like, that I wanted to be active and I wanted to be a contributor. I just didn't really know how I could do that. And so, in kind of coming up with this project, it's been a really good avenue to interface with other builders and to learn from other people. And like, like being in South by Southwest, a few weeks ago, as you know, it was just, it's a ton of fun. It's a ton of fun to feel the energy around what people are building, the excitement around what people are building, and just the collaboration. Like I don't know that I met anybody at South by that's a builder in Solana where I was like, yeah, I don't want to work with that person, and so it's been really great. We're still really early, and we're still figuring this stuff out as a whole, right? Like every day we're trying new things, we're learning from other people, and so it's a fun place to be right now. As far as why Solana, I think the true answer is, like, the people that really were jazzed about this idea and wanted to build it were like Solana natives already. There was a point where, when we decided, okay, this is what the project looks like this is how the mechanisms work in terms of like the audio files and the backends, and if we want to make these bands, like how easy or difficult is that going to be based on the chain we choose? How expensive is that going to be based on the chain we choose? And so, after kind of mapping out our use cases and looking, it wasn't just Solana, we looked at ETH, we looked at Tezos, we looked at a few others. I think it was just clear that, Solana had the NFT community that was growing. It has really cheap fees. So, like one huge incentive for us when we look at the top line metrics we care about is marketplace volume, right? It's honestly not floor price at all, because what we care about is, like, are our musicians earning royalties, and the way they earn royalties is through marketplace volume, right? And so like we're thinking about these incentive structures, and we're like, okay, if we have a studio, like it's a good thing if somebody goes and buys 20 NFTs, they keep 2 or 3 they like because they like the stems, and then they go and they sell the rest, right? Like that's a really like good use case for us. And so when we look at the chains and the back ends and the costs, it's like, okay, Solana seems like a really good fit, and we're already kind of like baked into this community. So that's kind of how we landed on that.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And that seems to be the general consensus. And even just doubling back on what you're mentioning about collaboration in the ecosystem, seeing that you guys are able to work with Olaplex, and then even the idea of open sourcing and really giving anybody the leverage to access these tools, build on top, and innovate is super exciting, and just an ethos that I think Solana likes to carry. So definitely interesting to hear about that. And I'm starting to get down to the bottom of my questions. I think
Sure.
we spent the last 40 minutes really giving good context about what Pixel Band is, how you guys got to where you are, and then really what you're looking to do moving forward, and how it's really all just getting started. The adoption is really at the beginning. You're seeing musicians start to get familiar with this, and then on the other end, some users are starting to get comfortable with the ideas of NFTs. And so I think it's really exciting to come, or what's to come. What I would flip around and ask to you is a very similar question there. What are some things that you're excited about? Maybe one for Pixel Bands, one for Solana that's coming up in the near or long term. Sorry, mid to long term.
Sure. Yeah, for Pickle Bands, I mean, I think just continuing to build the community, and just waiting to see like what they're going to do with these tools as we ship them, right? Like it's like just like when we walked into Gen 1, we were like, we don't know what's going to happen. We have an idea of what we want to happen, but we have no idea. And so that part is really exciting, I think, for Pixel Bands. Like this Launchpad and marketplace kind of tooling is going to be available here really soon. And yeah, I'm just really excited to see what people do with those tools. Like in an ideal world for me, like my like north star like vision for Pixel Bands is like you know a couple musicians meet that have never met before, that live across the world from each other, meet in the Pixel Bands community. They're super talented musicians. They end up collaborating, and they release like music that is just like out of this world, right? Like that would be like the ideal outcome for what we're trying to create. And so I'm excited for that possibility. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I think we're trying to create the environment for that to happen. And so just working at that every day is really what I'm excited about.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to jump in and say it's awesome, especially to watch the tools and the infrastructure develop for this to be possible. As it becomes easier, it makes more sense for musicians to leverage it, and it will just become more normal. I think obviously the main ethos here is the idea of redistributing and restructuring the way that musicians are paid, making it in a more fair manner, really trying to take and leverage that Web3 ethos of owning content.
Exactly, man. Like if you go back to, if you just boil down like what we're doing into like the first principles of crypto, it's trustless, permissionless, self-custody, right? Like if you can get people who are creatives to conceptualize that and give them the tools to actually go do it, like that's an exciting future.
100% agree. So I think we can wrap this up here. This was an amazing discussion, Koten. It was great learning more about Pixel Bands. I definitely got a lot more insight, understand the platform much better. I'm sure a ton of viewers do as well. I hope that you had as good as a time as I did jumping on. Amazing to hop on here and chat again. Definitely excited to just watch Pixel Bands continue to grow. You guys are obviously have this second gen coming up, which is focusing on EDM. And just so I'm not mistaken, musicians will still be able to submit to this. Maybe you can give a little outline of that, what it'll look like coming up.
Sure, absolutely. So yeah, like no concrete timelines yet. We're wrapping up this battle of the bands, and that will, kind of put the cherry on top of Gen 1. And then we can like really shift our focus to Gen 2. And so no timelines yet, but generally what this the process will look like is, we'll give people parameters for the music we want, and we've actually already announced that. And so, like I said before, and you can check our Git book on our 6-month roadmap. A lot of details about Gen 2 are in there, but just
Awesome.
generally, key of F minor, obviously EDM theme, and 128 BPM. And so the instruments we'll be taking will be bass, drums, lead, which is a little broad, but like if you think about like a synth lead or even a vocal lead or like just some sort of like, lead melody. And then another cool one that, we're excited about is effects, right? And so like if people want to make really cool effects that can be layered into some of these sounds or these songs, we want, we want to collect those too. And so the way it worked last time was, we had a window. So we said, we're going to start collecting music on this date. We have a Google form. And so all folks need to do or will need to do is go onto that Google form, give us the information we need, like what's your artist name, what wallet do you want the royalties distributed to, upload your files. And then that's kind of it. Like we actually take it all from there. If there are issues with your stems, like we will reach out individually and stuff like that. But once we have the stems, myself and J5, but really like more J5 because this is like his superpower. We'll go in and do the mixing and mastering of each individual stem, which is a extremely labor intensive process. I mean, for the 400 stems we got for Gen 1, I mean, it took, a couple of weeks to do that. So I'm hoping and anticipating we get more for Gen 2. And so, that'll be a little bit of a process of itself. But once all of the audio files are in good shape, we go into a generative mint. And so just like the mints that you know and love with visual NFTs, and as far as rarities go, as far as different attributes go, that's what we're going to do, or that's what we've done with Gen 1 and we'll continue to do with Gen 2, is go into a generative mint where, randomly these audio files will be minted to visual NFTs. I'm also really excited to share the art for Gen 2 because it's going to be a little different than Gen 1. And I think people are really going to like it. Just a little teaser there. But yeah, visual attributes will have rarity. The stems in there will have rarity. We already have some really big EDM musicians lined up to participate in this. And so, yeah, that's kind of what the process will look like. And then once we mint, your wallet will be in the smart contracts of whatever NFTs your music is on, and you'll get the royalties on that for life.
Yeah, that's super amazing. So you guys heard it here. For musicians that are looking to get involved, definitely keep an eye out on that. And I think the amazing part is that Gen 2 is really just step 2. This is something that is going to continue on indefinitely as long as there's demand for it and you guys only look to improve. So I think that wraps us up perfectly. As I said, I had an amazing time. Hope you did as well.
Yeah,
Colton.
likewise, Greg.
And just want to thank everyone for tuning in. So until next time, we'll catch everyone and peace out.